Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1668A, and today's date is September 19th, 2018, and the title of the episode is Faith in the Central Bank's Economic System Erodes, Countries React. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, the central bank, they like to keep everyone confused, and this is why over the many years they've been suppressing precious metals. They don't want people to pick up that, hey, you know something? Gold, silver, this is real money. The paper currency that we're printing out of thin air, it's absolutely worthless. And if you ever notice, the central banks, they create the currencies, they put countries into debt, they buy up all their hard assets, pennies on the dollar, when their system starts to implode, because they want the hard assets. They don't want the paper money. It's meaningless to them, and they know it. But they use it as leverage to get the hard assets. This is how they work everything. Now, with precious metals or cryptocurrencies, anything that challenges their paper dollar, well, they have to demonize it. And of course, with cryptocurrencies, they've been out there and they've been saying, criminals use it, it's for money laundering. But when you really look at what the banks have been doing, like HSBC and Danske Bank, we see that they're caught up in money laundering. Wells Fargo, they're caught up in changing documentation. And we see that Danske Bank right now, well, they're in a little bit of trouble. What type of trouble? Well, they've been caught laundering money. How much have they laundered? Well, it's estimated that they laundered about 200 billion euros, which is about $234 billion. Now, to put all of this in context, that means that's many times the roughly 17 billion that flows through Estonia banks during an average year, meaning that the money laundering perpetrated by Danske effectively transformed the Estonia banking system into a giant front for organized crime groups. And these individuals didn't do anything. There were investigations that were internal, there were investigations that were external, and nothing was done. Now we see that Danske CEO Thomas Borgen has decided to step down because, why? They needed a sacrificial lamb to take the blame for all of this. And of course, as CEO, he should have known what was going on, which most likely he did, and he was orchestrating a lot of this. Now, what's very interesting is that the central banks, they keep telling us that, well, it's really cryptocurrency. That's the problem. Criminals use it. Terrorists use it. It's used for money laundering, extortion, you name it. But when we look at the banking system, throughout the many years, what has the banking system done? They've done the same exact thing. Actually, what have the central banking system, what have they done? They've created a gigantic Ponzi scheme. They've lied to governments and to the people in those countries about what is really going on. So when you really want to see what's going on, and you hear the central bankers screaming at gold and silver, it's a barbarous relic, you don't need it, it's not worth anything, it's not real money, maybe back 1,000 years it was, today the paper currency, that's the real money, you have to think to yourself, are they telling us the truth? When they tell us cryptocurrency, they're used by terrorists, they're used by criminals, they're used for laundering money or blackmailing different companies. You have to think to yourself, is this really true? Because when you start to really look at what's been going on and you flip everything that they're saying, actually mirror everything that they're saying, you realize that they lie about everything. It's actually what they are doing. And they don't want you to see what they are doing. So they use projection and they project it out onto cryptocurrency and precious metals. We see here in the U.S., the housing market is continually imploding on itself. Permits have plunged, and we see permits have plunged about 5.7% month on month. The plunge in permits is the worst month since February of 2017. And this suggests a rough time ahead for housing as permits plummet to the lowest since May 2017. And home builder stocks, they're going to fall even further. And the Fed, as we know, they're going to be meeting very, very soon. And when they raise the interest rates, what do you think is going to happen to housing? Well, that's going to implode on itself. And we're going to see things start to really fall apart. Remember, everything is really wrapped around the housing market. The middle-class America, this is where most of their wealth is stored. They save up, they get a house, the house appreciates, and this is where they have everything. And it's also attached to many different economic sectors. I mean, lumber, steel, tar, asphalt, electrical, plumbing, copper, you name it. I mean, furnishings, you name it, it's tied to this. And once this implodes on itself, it then sends shockwaves to all the other economic sectors, and those implode, and you can't stop it. And this is what we're going to see happen, because what happens when the interest rates rise, people who are making a certain amount of money, they're knocked out of the market. They can't afford those houses anymore. Even if they have the down payment, even if they're paying 0% down, they still don't have enough to afford that house because the interest rates have moved up. And those people who are looking to refinance, they're not going to do it. And this is going to be a major problem. And then also, if we count auto loans, student loans, it's going to affect every single area. And this is why I believe that Trump and Powell are working together, and the Fed is going to be raising their interest rates. This time, most likely in December, if not the beginning of next year. Remember, everything is timed and planned for a specific reason. Trump, this whole entire time with the Patriots behind him, they have been pumping up this economy using the same manipulation that Obama was using prior to him, that the central bank was using prior to him. He's just continuing this, using their weapon against them for a specific reason. What is that specific reason? Well, the specific reason is that the system can no longer function. It's falling apart very, very quickly. Countries are losing faith in the U.S. dollar. Now, this is not the United States. Remember, it's separate and apart. The U.S. dollar is not the people's U.S. dollar. The U.S. dollar is a central bank dollar that they created and told us to use. This is their system. America was completely co-opted back in 1913. And we've been forced to use this debt note ever since, brainwashing us into thinking debt is a good thing, which it is not. And we know that countries around the world like Russia, China, and many others, they've been dumping treasuries. Now, they're not going to dump them all at once because it would hurt themselves. They dump a little bit at a time. Actually, Russia has accelerated its process. And when we look at this, we can see that foreign private sector investors and foreign official investors, central banks, governments, they have whittled down their holdings of U.S. Treasury securities by $21 billion at the end of July, compared to a year ago to $6.25 trillion, according to the Treasury Department tick data, which was released a day ago. So, with foreigners having shed $21 billion over the 12-month period, who bought this $1.468 trillion in new U.S. Treasury debt? Well, we know it wasn't Russia. We know it wasn't Japan. We know it wasn't China. They've been dumping. Japan dumped quite a bit, purchased a little bit, then dumped some more. But if you look at the graph, their trajectory is downward. When we start to really break this down, we can start to see where most of the treasuries are. So we have foreign holders, we have U.S. government entities, Federal Reserve, and U.S. institutions and individuals. Now, foreign holders, they have about $6.2 trillion worth of treasuries out of the $21.3 trillion. U.S. government entities have 5.7. Federal Reserve has about 2.3. So if we look at that number right now, that's about $8 trillion for the U.S. U.S. institutions and individuals has overtaken the foreign holders. They have $7 trillion. So when we look at this, about 15 trillion is owned by the U.S. and the Federal Reserve. Most of it, U.S. institutions, government, and individuals. So what we see here is that foreign holders are losing faith in the treasuries and they are dumping them. And the only place they can be picked up are investment companies here in the U.S. and institutions in the U.S. What's going to happen when the number continually dwindles? So the U.S. issues the debt, the U.S. is buying its own debt. I mean, how is this going to play out? This is not going to play out very well. This shows us that countries are losing faith in the system. And this is why Russia is out there saying, listen, we need to start using our national currencies. They're telling countries it is time. And we can see the push here with all these tariffs and the pushback from China. This is to destroy the central banking system, destroy the global trade system. And this is where this is all headed. We're going to be heading towards this transition. It's a gigantic reset. When people think of a reset, it's not just an economic reset. It's a reset of everything. The reset, I mean, think about what's going on right now. Reset of the government. Reset of the global economic system, which includes trade, currency, central banks, and everything. Reset of those in power, bringing it back to the people. So when you hear reset, we're talking about a total reset of everything. And it's happening right now, one phase at a time. Pretty soon, the people are going to take back full control of the governmental system, full control of their economic system, full control over what they want, instead of having it dictated to us. So get prepared, because we are going through this reset. And to get to this reset, we have to go through a transition period. And it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be bumpy on a global economic scale. It's going to be bumpy in a political, geopolitical scale. It's going to be bumpy all over the place. And we can see it's already been bumpy, because those in power, they're not just going to lay down and just say, go ahead, do the reset, let's transition. They're going to fight until the very end. And that is what we are seeing. And once this transition takes hold and all these entities are out of the way, well, this is when we can have the reset. And we're getting very close to this. But you need to be prepared for this transition, which is coming. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.